First of all, let me thank the IDB and the Intel to invite me here. It's a great pleasure to come here, and also it's my first time to come to Argentina. I'm very excited. So in next about half hour, so I will talk about probably one of all. If it's not the most important, but one of the most important reform now, it's taking place in China. It's reform in the capital market. It's an international financial system. Let me first of all, as usual, I would like to say the following. It is I'm a professor, and so I only express my own opinion, and it is with my research group. I do not represent any organization for my opinion. So the reforms. In exchange rate system and capital market liberalization in China, let me go to the issue. Okay, so it is great place to be here. Although China has having great economic growth, but for capital market, especially for international financial market reform, China is really a student. It's just recently only taken the international financial reform. There have never been a financial crisis happening in China, so we do not have experience. So it is a great chance for me to come over here and to learn what financial crisis really mean. So we will discuss some suggestions. And also, it will be very great if you can give us some suggestions. What should we do? What shouldn't we do? Okay. So I will also explain why we do this and why. So let me just explain. Okay. So issues. What do we have? It's three connected policy issues. So the first one is so-called independent monetary policy. Second one, it's what do we have now? It's a fixed exchange rate. The China renminbi is pegging to US dollar. It's about 6.2 something. And the third is capital market openness. So both in practice and in theory, these three things cannot. One country cannot have these three things together. That's basically called so-called trilemma of reforms. So in taking these reforms, China is doing three things. One, it's financial sector reforms. It's really taking in the past several months, and the stock market it's fluctuating in China, and I believe the rest of the world already feel what it implies. And China also try to reform the exchange rate system. Currently, China has the peg system, or we call managed floating exchange rate to the US dollar. And we also have this so-called capital market openness. So let me explain what it's doing now. First of all, it's doing a direction of reforms, is so-called financial sector reform. Financial sector reform taking place in two parts. One is central government. So central government doing things. One thing we call interest rate marketalizations. The loan rate and the lending rate are actually marketalization. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, the final state has been done. So the rate saving to bank is also marketized. So the interest rate to be marketized, that's the first step. Second step, try to reform the bank sectors. So the target has been written in the document, in the central government's document, is to have efficient, developed financial sectors, particularly the bank sectors. Okay, so bank sectors, what's the problem in the bank sectors? The bank sectors are dominated by 4 big banks, state-owned 4 big banks. The large part of loans are going to the state-owned firms. These private firms actually have some hard time to get to the credits. So that actually creates the problems when the economy is in downsides, when the economy, is that okay? So do I speak too quick? Yeah. So when the economy is in the downsides, and when we have a serious sectorial readjustment. So the problem occurred in past 2 years is so-called excess of the capacity. So when you have excess of the capacity, you have to cut down some sectors and then try to boom some other sectors. In this economy adjustment, financial sectors play a huge role. However, current financial sectors is not doing a satisfying job in the sense financial sector are not sufficient enough, not strong enough to support new firms in the new sectors. And also some firms in the downside sectors have a hard time to exit. So that both exit and entry requires highly efficient financial sector. So that's the financial sector reforms. It's really a crucial steps in the country we are taking place. Okay, so that moves quick. Interest rate already marketized. The entry and exit in the bank sector is slow. Why it is slow? You can imagine why it is slow, right? So it's not only needed to be decided by the central government, it's also needed to be supported by financial sector industries. When the financial sectors are not going to do something, it is hard to push them to move. Okay, so it's also hard. So that's the financial sector reforms. Let me repeat. So financial sector reforms, there are 2 things are taking place. First, in central government, the interest rate marketization. Second, entry and exit of the bank sectors. So that it's hard to move, but we have to do these things to support the real sector adjustment. Okay, so that's the first one. Second one, the target for exchange rate reform is go from peg to floating. That also has been written in the central government's documents. Why do we need to move from the peg to the floating? There are several reasons. China is a big economy. It's not a small economy, and China's economy it's very different from the U.S. economy. Therefore, the China's exchange rate to peg to U.S. both the business cycles in U.S. and in China are different, and also development levels are different. So the renminbi long-time peg to U.S. has reached to a point that we have to change. Before, maybe 10 years ago, China is still a small country, and like Singapore, like Hong Kong, and Singapore, Hong Kong has pegged their money to U.S. dollars for a long time. For small country, there's no problems, and for some Latin American countries, there's no problem. But for China, it is a problem. So it is the direction it's go more from peg system to floating system. That's we are working on. However, August 11, right? August 11, the central government, the People's Bank of China, take a small step, very small step, depreciate to 2%. Entire world say, no, you don't do this. it is so. We have not realized until August 11 the reform in exchange rate is so sensitive to the rest of the world. But now we know that. The ideal steps will be, first of all, we let these bands to become bigger, right? So theoretically now it's 2%. 2% band downwards and upwards. We would like to these bands to become bigger, larger, and then we moved from the fixed system to a floating system. But at the current moment, whenever there's anything change, the rest of the world think China is going to depreciate. No, that's not. But however, people are thinking that way. That makes the room to change exchange rate it's very small. Although, as Ambassador Yang discussed, as many people discussed, China the China economy, real economy is solid. So there's no reason why China wanted to largely depreciate. However, the expectations in the market do not give us a large room of doing this exchange rate change. Okay. Given that, and also we see the U.S. change the monetary policy quickly, and we do not know when the QE Fed will adjust interest rate. That certainly will affect China's capital market system. So this capital market openness, which basically so far what is in practice for foreign direct investment, for other things, basically it's open. The only restrictive is the financial capital market openness, short run financial market openness. But that part is a pretty dangerous part. So the problem becomes, given the experience other countries have, the financial market openness should be the last step. But the reality push this reform of the capital market openness to the first place. So then the most important thing is a sequence. How do we do this? Financial sector reforms, entry and exit of the bank system, that's slow. That's pretty slow. And exchange rate reforms, the rest of the world, the current situation do not allow us of doing that quickly. So looks like we only can move capital market openness. 2 weeks ago, China has this so-called capital market openness. You can see this. China has a new rule. I'm not sure if you may pay attention to that. It's a Shanghai Free Trade Zone. About 2 weeks ago, China has announced there are 40 items capital market openness in China's financial market, which basically says in Shanghai Free Trade Zone, within this zone, the capital market is open. Everything is open. There's no quota. There's no qualification requirement. And for the money change, for financial market, it's basically open. Okay, well, let me explain a little bit. What do we mean that opens in Shanghai Free Trade Zone? Okay, so China actually now established about 4 free trade zones within China: Shanghai, Tianjin, Guangdong, and Fujian, 4 provinces. The only free trade zone try to practice capital market liberalization is the so-called Shanghai Free Trade Zone, which is the city I live in. So the idea would be within Shanghai Free Trade Zone, it is just like an offshore market, like a Hong Kong or like a Singapore. So within Shanghai Free Trade Zone, the capital market is completely open. After 40 items 2 weeks ago, if these 40 items in practice, it is done. However, there are a boundary between Shanghai Free Trade Zone to the rest of China. So within this, to across Shanghai Free Trade Zone and the rest of China, there is still some restrictiveness. How do we do that? There are two different accounts called FT accounts, which call free trade accounts, which must be in Shanghai Free Trade Zone, and other account, which is outside of free trade zone. So as long as you transfer your capital into free trade account, then everything is open. Okay, so that's basically the idea. The problem is, how can we control the capital between inside the free trade zone and outside the free trade zone? We don't know. It's just a button, right? You click a button, it's done. So it's hard to do this. Okay, so that's basically the situation. Okay, so what do we do? The current risk control take two ways, so-called 2Q risk control. What do we mean 2Q risk control? Called qualification and quota. So as I mentioned, if you have a qualified account, so-called free trade account within free trade zone, that's first of all qualification. Second of all, there will be a quota, which within this quota, the market is open. Okay, so if that's so-called 2Q risk control. 2Q risk control will be very rigid, because it's really a 0-1 control, right? You either can use this account, that's a 1. If you don't use this account, that's 0. You can't do it. If you reach the quota, beyond the quota, no, you can't. You have to stop. And below quota, it's free. So it is very rigid risk control, and also it's not reliable. Either if the capital flow amount it's small, it does not change anything. But like the size of China, it's easily go to very large amount capital flow across the border. In that case, 2Q risk control, it's too rigid and it's not reliable at all. And we try to reform it right now. So that's the method we are doing. Okay, so as I discussed before, so the current sequence for whatever happening, current sequence is first, capital market liberalization. Second, interest rate liberalization. Well, I should write it's a financial sector development. Third, exchange rate floating. That's the sequence we are taking. It is, in theory and practice, this is not optimal sequence. So optimal sequence would be you would have a decent, solid financial sector first. You change your exchange rate system second. Then you go to capital market liberalizations. So that would be optimal sequence. However, as I mentioned, financial sector development is slow, first. Second of all, after August 11th, politically, there's no much such room for us to reform the exchange rate. We have to stick to it. So then the last part, so the ideally the last part, capital market liberalization now go to the first. That's very, we understand that's a very risky situation, but as so China, we do understand that. It's not say we do not understand. We do understand that. So there are two very big rules for financial market reforms in China. Two big rules. One, it's so-called marketization in international financial system. That's the direction we are moving on. Second of all, we want to control systematic risk to prevent financial crisis. we are confident, and also we are confident, and also we have to follow these two rules. This is just like a boundary of the reform directions. We will not allow financial system go to in danger of the risk, and also we will move forward to the marketization of the international financial systems. So that's basically two rules, and we are confident of doing that. Okay, so that's that. And then people would ask how to do this. Well, so given so many experience we have had in the rest of the world, if you do not change your the exchange rate system, if you do not have a solid financial sectors, you try to open capital market, that's very close to financial crisis. How can you control the systematic risk? Well, so that's why I come over here to learn, right? So, so we can exchange. I go to IDB, to IMF, and to all these organizations, and to countries that have had the financial crisis experience to learn how to do this. So one thing we try to use is a so-called nonlinear capital flow tax. So that's we try to do that. I know that Chile, or I think the Chile or Brazil, several Latin American countries took the Tobin tax, which basically is a capital flow tax, to control to manage the capital flows across border. I also understand, based on empirical evidence and based on research, this Tobin tax seems not work well. Not actually. So we try to do in our way, which is we call nonlinear capital flow tax. So what would be extreme? Extreme would be we open capital market, then the risk comes, the risk of financial crisis comes, then we close. So that would be the worst situation. So we open it, and then we close it. That would be the exactly not the things that we are going to do. Okay, so it has about 50 items of the capital market openness. So then the problem is, when the financial crisis comes, which button we should turn off, and what will be the consequences we should turn off. So that's actually as things that we are discussing. And so the nonlinear capital flow tax is the one thing we are thinking. So let me now turn to what we are thinking, how to combine these two things together. So that's the way we want to do that. Okay, so now let me switch to one thing we try to do. I'm not going to discuss the technical part. Let me just discuss the ideas what we want to do. The benefit cost. So how to do this capital market liberalization? That's all. I don't want to discuss. Empirical evidence. We do understand. If you have open capital market, and if the U.S. Fed change the monetary policy, there will be high risk for financial crisis. We do understand that. We do understand the financial crisis will have a huge effect on the country. We do understand that. Okay, so let's try to understand that. Okay. Basically, we try to design a tax. Here we call TI hat is a tax, which is a progressive tax. Imply if capital flow is larger, then tax rate will be larger. So that's the first thing. So it is different from the Tobin tax used by Chile and by other Latin America. So it's a nonlinear. So basically, it's a progressive tax. So that's the first difference. And okay, the reason we introduce this nonlinear or progressive tax, and is we investigate why the Tobin tax used by the Chile and all the other Latin American countries did not work. Why it did not work? If the tax rate is constant, if the tax rate is too small, when the crisis comes, it's smaller than the foreign return and the domestic return. The difference between foreign return and domestic return, it won't work. It will not prevent capital flight when the financial crisis comes, if the tax is too small. If the tax is too large, it's completely block the capital flow. So basically, it's a corner solution. Either didn't work, either completely block the capital flow. Therefore, the constant tax rate will not work. That's basically that's our understanding. So we introduce progressive tax. The tax will be larger when the capital flow is larger. So that's the first step. Okay. Second of all, we all understand the tax rate, change the tax rate is hard. In China, by the rule, you have to go to not only central government and also need to go to the People's Congress. Otherwise, you cannot change the tax rate. So we translate this tax rate into the reserves. Reserves, central government can use as a tool to change as a policy. What that reserve means? Basically means if you want to have, let's say, 1 million capital flow from China to US, and then 20% of the reserve have to be stay in the account. You only can 80% can flow. So that is equivalent to tax. So in practical, we're not going to use tax. We will use the reserve. So that's the second part. We try to solve this problem. Let me give you our numeric example. So you can clearly see. So the reason why we needed to impose this tax or reserve, it's because the individual borrowing cost is smaller than social borrowing cost. So that's the reason, and we clearly see from our model this tax actually is progressive. And next part you can see this is a reserve. Reserve is also progressive. Okay, second part. If you have the progressive tax, then investor can easily go around. For example, he can just set 2 counts or 3 counts, right? If you have 2 or 3, if it's a progressive. So you have to design incentive compatible mechanism. Let investors do not do this. Otherwise, there's no way to control. So the second part, we have to design a mechanism such that investor will only set 1 count, not 2 counts, not 3 counts. And to do this, we just add a fixed cost called account fee. If you add another account, you have to add account fee. And I can show you here in my example that if you set 1 count, the cost will be 11.95 million yuan. But if you set 2 counts, the cost will be larger. If you set 3 counts, the cost will be even larger. Therefore, for investor's own self-interest, he will not set multiple counts. Therefore, that mechanism will work. So, so far, we do not think we will use this mechanism to foreign direct investment or longer time investment, capital flow. That is only that designs only the method to control hard money, hard capital flow, or sharpening financial capital flow to precisely, this is designed to prevent the financial crisis to happen. So that's the thing. So let me conclude. Basically, we first of all, we try to, in capital market openness, we move very quickly to open the capital market. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, in theory, in Shanghai Free Trade Zone, capital market already open. So everything is open. That's the first. Second of all, we do understand opening capital financial market is very risky, very risky. And we do try everything to prevent financial crisis to happen. The method we try to work is to create a firewall to prevent these capital flight when the crisis come. That flight wall, we are thinking it's so-called nonlinear capital flow tax to prevent that happen. Meanwhile, when we settle this firewall of the capital flow, do we have the confidence to change exchange rate system? Possible, right? As long as the rest of the world have accurate understand of China's reform in exchange rate system, then we will move or do. And we do understand if we change exchange rate system from peg system to floating system, the financial crisis will be, the risk of financial crisis will be reduced significantly. We do understand that. And we will also find time to do that. And I would like to ensure people to understand if the People's Bank of China change exchange rate, the purpose of doing so is not depreciate. It's really not depreciating. The purpose of doing so, we are seriously trying to move from peg system to floating system. It's just to change the exchange rate system. So that would be my discussion on the exchange rate system. And at the same Thank you.